Nostalgia. One of the more interesting post-flight takes I've been noticing pop up is the idea that Halo Infinite's multiplayer is nostalgic. Now, while most people would use this word to describe the feeling of longing for days gone by, Halo fans use it to pretend like they're describing the first 3 Halo games. And I say pretend because with how the Halo community trends, when we use the word nostalgic, we're most likely talking about just the 3rd Halo game. Some people are under the impression currently that Halo Infinite is a tried and true callback to 2007's Halo 3, from a multiplayer standpoint that is. And honestly, I gotta say, that's pretty off base. I'm the Home Slice, Ascend, Period. And don't get me wrong, 343 did a masterful job of crafting Halo Infinite out of many legacy features of Halo. That is, if by legacy you mean the last 10 years of Halo's lifespan in particular. And if you don't want to believe me, or are just curious enough to hear me out, today I'll be explaining why Halo Infinite is far from a nostalgic Halo experience, by breaking down how it is in many ways the perfect end product of Halo's last decade of games. Like always, don't miss my viewer question at the end, and if you're a regular viewer here, be extra sure to catch me in the final moments of this video. Let's get started. So, you've decided to call Halo Infinite nostalgic. Well, let's start by putting a definition on that word. We could really be honest with ourselves and just admit when we say nostalgic, we're just talking about Halo 3, but for the sake of the argument, I'll open up the term to the first 3 Halo games. That way, us silly Halo 2 fans and the ancient Halo CE fans can have a shake at this too. The next thing we need to understand is what actually defines Halo's multiplayer gameplay. The big initial concept to grasp is that all Halo FPS games are united by a common gameplay logic known as the dance. In June of 2020, I explained that despite their differences, each game presents an honest adaptation of the dance, which is the symbiotic relationship of Halo's weapon sandbox, movement system, and its approach to damage and health. If you want to explore the dance more, I suggest watching that video in tandem with this one. To that same effect, the things that most obviously separate the games is how they build upon or modify the dance, and each single Halo FPS has its own interpretation. No 2 games repeat the same dance. There are large items in each game that represent the major ways their corresponding titles made a perversion of the dance. Now we can directly compare and contrast Halo Infinite to its sister titles by picking out the game's key dance modifiers and seeing what matches up and what doesn't. We can start with the simple yet most important examples. Universal aim down sights is present in Halo Infinite. We call this Smart Link, a feature introduced in Halo 5 and present in no original trilogy game. Halo Infinite has naturally integrated sprinting, a feature introduced in Halo 4, perversion of a Halo Reach feature. We can even nitpick on the fact that Halo Infinite has additional mobility features like sliding and clambering, which again were a Halo 5 feature unseen until then. And one of the more interesting quirks in Halo Infinite is the reintroduction of equipment to Halo, which granted was a Halo 3 item, but equipment is backed with some moderate inspiration and blending with the armor ability system from Halo Reach and Halo 4, so it's sort of a shared callback. These items alone are major influences on the gameplay experience. In fact, all of these items were originally critiqued as things that broke Halo, if that's the term we're going to use. So the fact alone that these things exist in Halo Infinite might be enough to convince some players that this game is better fit with these games, and not these ones. I mean, we would have made this same argument 5 years ago. But on this channel, it's not really enough to just do a checklist, brush off our thinking caps, and say, I win. I think to fully appreciate how little Halo Infinite has to do with the first 10 years of Halo, we need to understand and appreciate what it does so well to build upon the last 10 years of Halo. For example, since 2012's Halo 4, 343 has been trying to spruce up the Halo weapon sandbox to feature more general versatility. Despite Halo 4's weapon sandbox actually being fairly well balanced, loadout weapon wise, 343 foiled themselves by allowing players to create custom classes, which allowed them to start with power weapons, utility weapons, and 2 layers of game-changing abilities. Mistake noted. In 2015's Halo 5, 343 cut away custom classes and again set out to craft a well-balanced weapon sandbox. They again did pretty well, but now each weapon was so good that the lines that previously separated weapons in Halo's Pyramid of Power became ultra blurred. This was an issue to many players, as they said it created an environment where everything was too good, too damage oriented. Mistake noted. Enter 2021's Halo Infinite. By my measure, the weapon experience in this game is a general adjustment to Halo 5, but with a focus on one very key Halo gameplay quirk, trading up and trading out. The AR and Magnum are just good enough in this game to where any semi-competent player could hold their own in a snap fight and even emerge successful. But the distribution of pickup weapons in the game has this renewed focus on function rather than power. I would trade a pulse carbine if I knew I was going to fight at range. I would trade a heat wave if I knew I was going to be in an enclosed space. I would use the commando to increase my general fight capabilities. By revisioning 8 years worth of gameplay experiences, Halo Infinite crafts a well-adjusted end result that is reminiscent of its predecessors, but is also unique enough to stand alone. And that's just one example, drawn out in full. The game is full of these examples. Halo Infinite iterated Halo 5's movement system down to the features that enhanced gameplay, rather than the ones that most dramatically changed it. Halo Infinite adopts Halo Reach's armor customization in a way that is familiar, but in a way that still makes use of the quirks that came in later games. Not to even mention how Infinite seems to have a high general commitment to the Reach era aesthetics anyway. It would take an entire video to properly explain how Halo Infinite has remedied the sprint debate without having to force any side to truly compromise. 343 solved sprint without getting rid of sprint. Depending on who you ask, sprint is the death of Halo. And while I'm sure some of you would stick around for an extra hour or two as I explained each topic, I know most of you won't. What I want you to take away, however, is just how focused 343 was in Halo Infinite with making sure they didn't reinvent the wheel. While some of the concepts and approaches in Infinite might seem new or fancy, in reality they are just highly polished, decently adjusted items from Halo Reach onward. While Infinite makes its nods to the original trilogy by including things such as the chopper or spike grenades and a half-decent BR, these things are not big enough gameplay dictators to portray Infinite as an extension of the first 3 games. Now, the point of this video isn't to isolate any fans or make anyone feel disenfranchised. That would be a little silly considering I'm a fan who fits back here on the timeline. The point, however, is to make sure we are giving credit where credit is due, and to act as a forward stop to the rewriting of the narrative some might be doing intentionally or unintentionally. My goal in each video, this one included, is to be critical of the topic and to subject it to objective abuse. If someone asked me, is Halo Infinite like Halo 3? My honest answer would be no. And that's okay. It's still easily one of the best Halo games we've gotten, to date, full stop. And it achieves that not just by iterating on the last 10 years of Halo, but by adopting small quirks or making good on promises from old ones too. I just think the scale weighs the most heaviest on the last 10 years. Anyway, right about now I ask you all a question. If we're operating under the assumption that Infinite is an iteration of the last 10 years of Halo, why do you think 343 changed the things they did? Do you think this was the best way they could have iterated the last decade? And hey, if you're a regular here and you want to support the channel, I sell stuff. I even added new stuff. And I want to give one stuff away to one home slice. Store link is below and giveaway link is below. That's going to do it for this video. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, I'll catch y'all later. And follow me on Twitter.